opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Howdy ho, everybody. Come to you cordless from glamorous Minneapolis. It's Tuesday night, April 14th, 2026. I am Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode 337, if you keep score at home. Who would have thought that? It's unbelievable. Our guest tonight is Paul Blake Smith. We're just going to put Paul on the screen because I want him to actually hear what I'm going to say here. Hi, Paul. How you doing?
Just fine.
So Paul, so here's the deal. So I bought your book on, and also let's put your books on. There's 3 of your books I'm going to put on the screen here right away too, because they're kind of a set. You got MO41, The Bombshell Before Roswell, President Eisenhower's Close Encounters, and the Nixon Gleason Alien Encounter. And I would suggest you buy all 3 of them. I haven't. I'll tell you, Paul, I haven't actually bought MO41 because there was no Kindle copy of it. But I bought your book on Eisenhower last year, and I loved it. And I was like I told you off the air. I'm so impressed with the amount of research you did. This is the thing. These books are copiously researched, and for people don't think people in the UFO community aren't serious. You have to look at this. I mean, this is really amazing. I mean, I cannot tell you how impressed I am. The amount of work you put in this is unbelievable. But I bought your book last year on Eisenhower. And so then I ended up talking to Lauren Ranger because she wrote a book on the Carl Hignan thing, and I had her on last week. And I knew she ran Foundation's books. I knew that. But I didn't realize she was your publisher. And I just had
she's my boss.
Yeah, when I was researching for her, I realized, oh my God, she publishes you. And I asked her when the interview was done, I said, is there any chance I could talk to the Smith guy? And she said, oh yeah, sure. And here we are, we're talking. So anyway, I forgot go ahead.
How many times have you bought a UFO book and it's just so flimsy, lightweight, there's no research, just somebody's wacky theory.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Mostly I go by the 95% theory for pretty much everything. 95% of these books are just crap. They're crap.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And even if they're writing about what I consider to be factual events, they're still crap. It's just crap.
Yeah.
And I can't
references. Yeah.
Nothing. And you did exactly the opposite. So I want to go through this here because I just told you I'm talking too much, but here's what I'm going to stop talking in a second. I didn't realize until this morning that you're from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And I've talked about that. The Cape Girardeau alleged UFO crash in 1941, which predates Roswell. And my first question to you is, growing up in that sound, did that have anything to do with your interest in the subject?
Believe it or not, I didn't learn of this until the late 1990s, I'm embarrassed to say. I lived in Cape Girardeau my first 30 years, and my grandfather was a judge and my dad a paralegal, and they did not know the story. But when the story broke in the news in the late 90s, they recognized all the names that were popping up because they knew these people. And apparently in Cape Girardeau, some people and others were very frightened for the rest of their lives and didn't say anything. So the book, I'm researching the heck out of that. Again, it's been 10 years since my first book on that. I've got a few corrections, some updates, some new information. And that'll be out July 6th from Llewellyn Publishing.
And so your book, MO41, the Bombshell, is basically about this incident. Did you, because you were from there and your family knew people, did you have an easier time researching this than others might have had?
I think so. I knew the lay of the land, certainly. Any of these places I was familiar with. More research, I was a number of things myself, including how many times Senator Harry S. Truman, the Grand Master Freemason of the state of Missouri, was in and out of Cape Girardeau, and that Franklin Roosevelt was in and out of Cape Girardeau in 1920 while he was running for vice president of the United States. So there are connections. So many people were Freemasons. They helped the secret. That's what Masons do. They're good people. Was a Mason. And so it just kind of got buried, especially when World War II happened about later for America, our involvement in the war. And it just showed everything, and it was all, but we're slowly piecing it together today.
Yeah, this supposedly happened in was it April of 41?
Right, late April of 41. We were with All Nations, but we had just started the Lend-Lease program of manufacturing guns and ammo and tanks and such to lend to Britain to defend democracy. So we were edging closer, but we were not part of World War II when this crash occurred.
Is the crash site known? And like with your familiarization of the city, did you know where that location was?
People claim to know it precisely. I don't know the general location, and if I did know, I would not tell anyone. This is private property, and it's a farm, and people can't showing up and traipsing all over the place. There are no fences, and it's somebody's business, and you can't have a bunch of tourists from all over the world on this place.
And I didn't want you to spill that.
Sued. Yeah, I would get sued if I told the exact location, I'm sure. So I'm keeping my yap shut.
I just want to know if you knew where it was. So you do.
A general location, the specific crash site where we go and pick up maybe soil and have it tested, no.
Oh, okay. All right. So now, do you want to go through the story here? What happened? I mean, I know basically, but I'm sure you know way, way better than I do. Like what happened in April in 41 in Cape Girardeau?
There was a description. There was a minister who spoke up to his family that night and said, I go, and it was from someone associated with the department. He showed up quickly in a car and took me about 13 or so miles out of town to a farm where there was a fire in a field, and firemen, policemen, the press, and various farmers and onlookers were mingling around and staring at this metallic debris that had set the farm field on fire, and there was smoke, and was trying to put it out any way they could. And there was a round crashed disc, silver disc. The pastor said that he was told that was apparently a crash because apparently the airport was not too far from the crash site. So they were all, a plane with a fuselage and wings and propellers and all that stuff. What the round silvery gray craft that had broken open, and there were three gray little people, as one woman told me. She heard the adults talk at the time. Little people, little on the ground, apparently inert. One was barely breathing. So the minister kneeled over him and tried to read from the Bible some prayers and pray for his eternal soul. The creature stopped breathing and died in front. So it certainly appears though they were bio-robots, partly biological, partly cybernetic. They were all identical as a punch mold with big heads and black eyes and long rubbery arms and legs, as if they weren't really meant to walk around too much. They were just like limp dolls. And that's according to the grand of the minister, who saw a photograph taken at the site. Two men were asked to prop up an alien under the arms, and they did, this lifeless alien being, and they took one shot of him. And the snapshot was given to the minister, and he to his family. And somebody swiped it in the early 1950s, and who tries to claim, I have the snapshot, and you see some kind of imposters online. Those are recreations. The actual picture was, but it did show this creepy looking alien with just tiny dots for a nose and a slit for a mouth, apparently no ears, crinkly silvery skin, like it had been exposed to our high oxygen atmosphere and could not survive that. So the military came in that night and scooped it up and said, "You're not to talk about this with anyone, and it's a matter of national security." And they swore the minister to secrecy and sent him home. And they asked him, he was ashen face and really shook up when he got home. "Where have you been? What's going on? What was that phone call all about?" And he kind of broke his oath right away and told his family, he said, "I'm never going to discuss this again." And apparently he did not. He did let slip the truth, and the family held on. And that's one angle of it that came out in the late 1990s.
Oh, I got
my stepmother. Yeah.
I got two questions before you go on. Does anyone know how long it was between the time the disc hit the Earth and the army, the military showed up? Does anyone know what that time frame was?
Probably about 2 or 3 hours.
All
This
right.
happened. There was an Air Corps training program in Sikeston, Missouri, and one of its executives was the brother of the Cape County sheriff. So they were probably caught when they thought it was a plane crash. And when they arrived and saw that this was something from another world, they called for reinforcements, probably radioed or telephoned Washington, D.C. There was no Pentagon in those days. The War Department would have handled it. And they scooped it up on orders, I'm sure. And so we may never know exactly how long it lasted in Sikeston, but I think only a day or two before it was flown to Washington, D.C. And it was the crash recoveries, 3 dead bodies and a silvery gray disc that had been damaged were seen by 2 different witnesses, one of them a minister, in Washington, D.C. So the story really hangs together.
All right. So my second question, other than the military that showed up, do you have any idea roughly how many residents of Cape Girardeau actually saw this thing other than the minister? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, it could be anywhere from 30 to 40, perhaps.
Right.
One reason they would cover that up very quickly is that we were worried about Nazis and spies.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, the FBI opened a field office in Cape Girardeau 1 month before the crash because there was Nazi sabotage. So many German citizens in the countryside of Cape Girardeau that there were some spy rings and some sabotage going on in factories. So that makes sense that the minister said that there was an FBI agent there, and I think he was administering oaths of secrecy. So the story, again, hangs.
Yeah. All right. So next question. Did the minister ever, or anybody that saw this, any of the residents, were they ever, after the fact, were they ever threatened or harassed by by government people? Or specifically, what I want to know is that photo. Is there any chance it was stolen?
There was a man from the newspaper who was taking pictures with a big speed graphic news camera like you see in all the movies. Mm-hmm. And he had his film and like his anything he may have developed taken away. He was known as One Shot Froney, and he was a distant relative of our family.
Oh.
And he was Garland Fronebarger was his name, and he was used to taking with a small hobby camera, a Brownie box camera, one picture, and he would walk away because he was a cheapskate and he wanted to save on film. Even though this was like the biggest story ever, right. They propped up this alien. Yeah, the alien. He took one snapshot and walked away. It was that apparently newsman who showed up on the minister's doorstep about 2 weeks after the crash and said, "I have a copy of this. I want you to have a copy." So there could be other copies that he hid somewhere in Cape Girardeau or stuffed in his attic or down in his basement. I think if he ever tried to pull it out, they warned him pretty quick. You keep your mouth shut. You turn over all copies of this, they probably came down on him pretty hard.
Yeah. Now, I've often said that this is probably the first reasonably documented UFO crash in America. Do you think that's true? Do you know any others?
I think so. There was one in Aurora, Texas that was an aerial crash,
Oh,
and some
right.
people think it might have been alien. Two different well-known UFO researchers, one Burns and the other is Kevin Randles, looked into that story and said, alien here. It was just an aerial crash of some sort of little vehicle that might have been a steel balloon from like Fort Hood or Fort Worth in Texas that windmill. So I think Cape Girardeau really was the first UFO crash in American history.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so let's go forward here. So you've written two books, both on Eisenhower meeting aliens and Nixon and Gleason. Nixon taking Jackie Gleason to see aliens. But the thing I found interesting in your book on Eisenhower is you talk about the fact that there's a good possibility that before 1954 or specifically 1948, Truman might have met an alien too, right?
We might well have had a crash. The as Mexico crash may have been real. One man named Frank Scully, I think it was, looked into it, and then apparently some government people sent in some scammers to lie to him about it, and then that made his reputation look bad. But other people have come forward with some information, some bits and pieces that some alien bodies were recovered and creature was still alive. And they took him to Los Alamos labs in New Mexico, and he spoke to them in English and was apparently pretty friendly. So they gathered some information, and they even found on the spaceship itself that crashed a kind of high-frequency radio communication device, if you want to call it that. And he apparently cooperated, showed them how to use it so they could communicate with his people. And about a year and a half later, they managed to set up a landing for his people that he be allowed to go back to his race. Sounds like a pretty wild story, but you have to read the book. And if you're ever interested in Aztec, look it up.
You know, the one thing that really impressed me about your research is how you documented the logs, the presidential logs, and the diaries of all these people involved. That must have taken an enormous amount of work, especially going back so far.
Yeah. It's digital. The president now has them online, but you got to know a specific date and what to look for and what means. So again, I try to put every bit of research I can into this and back up my case. It's still a circumstantial case, but many a court case is one on circumstantial evidence. So I think this surviving alien may have had contact with a high-ranking official in the Truman administration named Dwight Eisenhower, who took office shortly after Truman finished his time, obviously on Inauguration Day, 1953. And apparently there were high-frequency radio communications by the military to set up a specific time and date for an extraterrestrial race of fully human-like beings to land at a secure airfield in America to communicate face-to-face. And I think Eisenhower went for it.
So you brought up, I didn't know this, the fact that Eisenhower was actually Truman's Joint Chiefs of Staff, right?
Right. And a couple other high positions that he was like the most trusted man in America, even before he became president, a war hero. Everyone loved Ike, and he won in a landslide. So who else would you have entrusted this top secret, very sensitive issue of the Aztec crash and the recovery remains and this friendly alien who is willing to communicate?
And his name was Centimus? Is that what they called him?
Yeah, Centimus. That's the best they could come up with. And this is all confirmed, by the way, in the documents I put in the book, in the appendix, which was leaked in 2017 from a January 1989 Defense Intelligence Agency briefing that mentioned the Aztec crash and that Eisenhower did allow communications with this human race and that he did go to meet them, and in fact, 3 different times. So it confirms everything.
I'm going to stop you here again. The one thing I found really interesting about your book is that, the Majestic 12 documents have been debated and debated forever. But according to your research, there's other verified American military documents that reference them, right?
Right. Eisenhower briefing documents are debatable. maybe real, maybe a combination of fact and a little extra fiction, or complete frauds. I don't think Eisenhower really needed a briefing on this because he handled a lot of the situations in the document and knew all this himself. But it's still real. But these other documents that have come forward prove the case that, for instance, Henry W. McElroy, New Hampshire politician, says on camera, I saw the documents that said Eisenhower did go to meet with these extraterrestrials. They approached him with the idea, and he pardon me.
No, I'm going to run an idea by you here because I don't know if you put this together. But the Centimus character that apparently survived this crash, based on what you said, he'd probably be described as a Nordic or tall white, right?
Could be, yeah. Very human-like and friendly and educated, and he knew all about what we're doing here on planet Earth, monitoring and observing us. And so it may have been a case when Eisenhower went to meet with aliens in '54 that they were Septimus and his friend.
So you said, now I don't. Maybe I got my timeline screwed up here, but from what I remember, you said that Eisenhower met Centimus and that they arranged for a way station for their race to come and land here to do repairs and stuff like that. Is that right?
Kind of like that, yeah. First in 1948, when he was taken into custody, I guess for lack of a better term, the friendly alien, they eventually moved him to an outpost for Army intelligence out in the Vermont. And at the same exact time, as I point out in my book, Eisenhower abruptly leaves his job as Columbia University president and said, I'm going on a health-related vacation. And he loved to go hunting and fishing in Vermont. So, you can put the two together.
Yeah.
And that could have established a relationship. There are other reasons why I say that in the book. But the aliens who communicated by high-frequency radio and set up this encounter with Eisenhower in '54 may have been of the same race and proved themselves friendly enough and trustworthy. Let's put it this way. If Eisenhower had gone on a golf vacation to Palm Springs and he had a report that aliens had landed not far away and no one knew in advance and knew nothing of this situation, you wonder how fast they would have slapped Ike on a plane and got him, for security reasons. But they did not do that.
Right. So the reason I brought this up, are you familiar with the story of Charles Hall, and
the tall whites,
the physicist? He said he was assigned as a weatherman at Nellis in 1965, and he said they had a secret base there for aliens, and he dealt with them for 2 years. The amazing thing is, I found that his description of the aliens matches almost exactly your description of Centimus, that they spoke English. They could pass as humans, basically, or kind of weird looking humans, but they could. They were very social. They knew all about humanity. He said the very same thing that you're alleging, which I find very interesting.
Yeah. Since my book came out, there have been a couple of stories online with scientists and cosmologists who they're speculating, but they feel based on facts that there are a number of Earths, many of them probably in our galaxy, and that they have produced human life. And some are probably more advanced than we are, and some are not quite as advanced. It just depends upon what stage they're at. Some of them could have mastered space flight. But it's conceivable that humans could have come to Earth in past and certainly in the mid-1950s.
Yeah, Hall spent his entire rest of his career as a professional physicist trying to figure out how they flew that damn spacecraft, because he said he saw them work on it, and he said it looked just like an electric generator, except it wasn't using electrons. He said they were using some other subatomic particle, and he spent his entire career trying to figure that out and never did. The guy's in his 80s No.
Yeah. Was that intact? A complete model of what we were gifted?
No. These were spacecraft. He said landed at this secret base at Ellis and they took off again. They landed basically for repairs and maintenance. So that's what he saw.
See.
But it was nothing. He saw nothing they actually gave us. No, he didn't see that. But he said he was allowed to ask questions of the mechanics, and he said he saw the generators they used, and he said they looked just like a dual pole electric generator, but they weren't using electricity. That's what he said.
Wow. That starts to get in over my, but it does sound very similar. One of the stories out of the Eisenhower encounter is the aliens landed and were very friendly and gifted us a craft. Here's one to look over at your leisure. So,
right. I know the amazing thing is, you string all these stories together and they there's some continuity. I mean, I just watched this new documentary on Bob Lazar, and I know I've always believed a story. I thought it was way too elaborate for any person to make that up. That's what I thought. But, he said the same thing. It appears that the aliens, he never actually saw any aliens, but he worked on the craft. He said they gifted them the craft. They just gave it to them. Yeah. So... just to hear it, take this apart.
We can never be 100% sure that Bob is. The more you read, the more you listen to him, he may well be telling the truth, and he's never really exaggerated or just story. And movie producers offered him to fictionalize his story for some crazy alien invasion movie, and he turned them all down, to his credit.
Yeah, and I know that I can't remember who wrote this. There's some military general who said that, talking about exaggeration, he said that Lazar's story was largely correct, that maybe he exaggerated a little bit of it, but it was basically correct. That's what he said. I can't remember the name of that guy. I don't even think he gave a name. I think Richard Dolan wrote about that, I think. But okay, so all right. So now, we got Truman in 1948, meeting with the Senimus guy. So now explain what happened in February of 54 with Eisenhower. So in Palm Springs,
he had just gone on a vacation for quail hunting in February of 54 to Georgia the week before. Suddenly he needed a vacation 700 miles away from Washington, D.C. to play golf out in the Palm Springs desert. And he did go.
I need to stop you here because we need to point out that in 1954, Palm Springs was a very small town. It barely existed.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. And I actually happened to look this up. Frank Sinatra came to town, I think it was in 48, and there was nothing, until Sinatra came, this place was like nothing. It was dusty, and Sinatra showed up and said, "I want to build a house here," and then the whole thing kind of took off. But anyway, there were only in 54 there were only like 8,000 people living there.
Right, you could sneak in and out with very little fanfare, a celebrity or as a president, which made it even more of a perfect place if you were setting up an alien meeting at nearby Edwards Air Force Base out in the Mojave Desert outside Los Angeles. So once again, it made a lot of sense for him to go way out of his way to play golf. He loved to play golf in Augusta. We just saw the Masters on Sunday. Eisenhower was obsessed with the Augusta, played it dozens of times. They still have an Eisenhower cabin there that they created just for him. But for some reason, 2,700-mile field trip just to play golf for a few days.
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that was the cover story to be out there because this was arranged alien landing. And once he got the phone call that he said they don't show any sign of hostility, after a few hours, waited until nightfall, and he snuck away from his schedule. And all the media were assembled in the hotel, the White House press and the world press that was covering him. Big party at the local Palm Springs hotel, and that kept them distracted perfectly. They didn't know anything of what was going on. The Eisenhower planned this just great.
So, Paul, do you have any idea how they set this meeting up? I mean, obviously there was some pre-communication. Do you have any idea how that went down? Or
I would imagine through the high frequency radio communications through binary code, and that they were satisfied with the answers they were getting back, and to an out of the way place, and Air Force bases way out there, surrounded by mountains. Soldiers were told to beat it one weekend and take your possessions and don't come back for a few days. So that largely emptied out the place. And so again, there were these rumors that sprang up. I collected them in the front part of my chapter. All these different people said, Eisenhower was here on February 19th, some of them. Even some photographs of him taken from some movie footage that was capturing him with these alien creatures that came down on the runway out on the Edwards base. And I know that sounds crazy, but there's a Stefano Barbato who was reporting on the Vatican, and his source said, I want to tell you about something I've discovered. There's this film footage, some black and white and some in color, of Dwight Eisenhower at Homestead Air Force Base meeting with friendly alien beings, And so it's just astounding. They wanted to record it, and it would, just in case things went haywire, they would have a record of it,
Right.
So like a little action, I guess.
And the thing is, and I pointed this out before too, that before like the 1970s, it was extremely difficult to fake photography. I mean, basically only a Hollywood, even getting down to the JFK assassination and some of those photos, the only two entities in the United States that had the resources to convincingly fake photography was the movie studios and the government. That was it. So if they took, my point is, if somebody took movie film of this meeting, it's that if you saw it, that was probably legit. The idea of faking that would be very difficult.
Yeah, one of the eeriest parts of my research, do you remember this guy who looked just like Eisenhower, just happened to show up even though he was a New York City filmmaker? I'm in the Village, and people did it like this guy looked just like Dwight Eisenhower. So he served two different purposes. He could act as a decoy or as a double in case of emergency, and the filmmaker recording this. I give the guy's name. I don't know what happened to him. I wish I had more research, but I don't have absolute proof. But you just can't be a coincidence that Eisenhower flew all this way, his exact double walking around the Village in Palm Springs.
Yeah. So, okay. So can you take us through exactly at this first meeting, precisely what happened?
5 alien craft came down apparently in the afternoon. 3 were circular and 2 were cigar shaped, elongated. And they came down out of the sky and may have actually been fired upon by a general who didn't get the memo of what was coming that day. He was commanding artillery practice out in a field, and he ordered them to turn their guns on the arriving spaceships, and their fire had no whatsoever. A sergeant said later that we fired on them, and the explosive mortar attack did nothing, and the 5 craft floated over the base and landed on a distant airfield on the runway. So that Eisenhower came out that evening to this open hangar and stayed at the lip of it and spoke in English as the alien beings approached from their craft, very friendly and knowledgeable, speaking English. It's a pretty wild sounding story, but again, I try to put in as many sources and resources who say this.
Oh, that's the point. It's a completely wild story, but on the other hand, you've documented this so well that it's like it's hard to believe at this point that this didn't happen. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. More and more people are realizing that we have had contact and we made a deal. I was just reading yesterday, 2 important UFO researchers have come to the conclusion we've made some sort of secret agreement with these extraterrestrials, our American government. Well, that's exactly what is purported to have been done by Eisenhower on February 19, 1954. It was a Friday night. And that they were kind and friendly, and they kept warning us, we're polluting the planet, we're polluting the upper atmosphere. Please stop your atomic bomb test detonation program. You're contaminating everything on the planet. And I think that's good excuse or a reason to come down and speak to the man in charge. If you really cared about your human brethren and this planet, you would ask, we need to talk face to face about what you're doing to this world.
So, Paul, did this meeting move inside, or did they just stay standing on the tarmac talking?
I believe Eisenhower maintained his position at the edge of the runway, at the edge of the giant open jet plane hangar. According to one source, the aliens offered to let Ike and his friends go inside and inspect their craft. And Eisenhower was a little cautious and conservative. That was his nature. And he said no. But one story said they were allowed to pick up one of the craft and lug it around. They couldn't believe how lightweight it was. This is high-tech metal and propulsion system engineering that we're not all that familiar with. And they really impressed Eisenhower. They put on an air show and flitted around in their ships, probably zipping around and up and down and back and forth very quickly, far surpassing what our greatest Air Force technology can come up with. And then they did something else that caused Eisenhower to apparently get extremely worried.
What was that?
Once the air show was over, the aliens stepped out of their craft and reached Eisenhower on the runway. They cloaked themselves and made themselves invisible.
Oh, wonderful.
They manipulated, their molecular structure, and Eisenhower and the group were astonished and very nervous, and then they reappeared, I think, in different places. A test pilot who was there spoke up in the early 1980s, and he said they were there, but we just couldn't see them for a while. So that really shook up Eisenhower, like, oh my God, we can't have this going on planet Earth. It would cause social chaos. And he was probably right. People would panic at aliens like this, as friendly as they are, landing, flitting about in our skies, landing, trying to talk to people, making themselves invisible, or maybe camouflaging us, what they call in Star Trek cloaking, a cloaking device, and that this was real, and that this was too much for Eisenhower to accept.
Well, okay, so how long did this meeting last, the first one?
Oh, an hour or two, I would think. They talked, and there were no weapons present, no sign of hostility, and just invitations to do this or that and to discuss their bomb detonation program that was going on. And indeed, in about 8 days after the meeting, I think it was, bomb went off, Castle Bravo explosion. Look it up online. It was far worse than anyone thought. All our scientists were totally unprepared. It was devastating in the South Pacific, and it spread nuclear contamination and kind of made the Eisenhower administration look pretty bad.
Huh. And in the first meeting, these were once again what generally called the Nordic aliens, like the tall, blonde, human-looking ones, correct?
Yeah, one person called them the Etherians. Another called them just the visitors. It might have been Nordic-like, very human-like. I don't know how tall they were. One Army operations manual was leaked many years later from April of '54, just weeks after the event, and said we're being visited by at least 3 or 4 races, and one of them looked very human-like, and they're only about 5 foot tall, with very little hair like fuzz on the top of their heads, but they look a lot like us. And the test pilot said later they looked a lot like us, only were slightly misshapen by human standards.
Right. Did they mention at all where they were from?
If they did, I could not find it out, to my chagrin. It would be interesting to know, wouldn't it? How far off in our galaxy or from another dimension did they come from? I was not on that out.
And so now this was the first meeting of 3. Is this correct?
Yes, at least according to this 1989 leaked Defense Intelligence Agency document, that there was an agreement drawn, had to be refined and ratified by both sides. So they met again in July of '54, and I found a little Eisenhower schedule where he could have done that. And then again in February of '55. number of witnesses who came forward, and some research by Campbell, he's passed away by now, who said that I flew into Holloman Air Force Base, I believe it was in New Mexico, and stepped out of Air Force One, which was the Columbine then, his special airplane, and 2 discs came down over the runway, hovered in midair, according to eyewitnesses, and the other one landed, and Eisenhower met with it for a little bit. And then he went into the Air Force Base and he swore everyone to secrecy and said, we want to discuss this. This never happened. It's a matter of national security. Sound familiar? And so he got in his plane and flew back to Washington. So that may have been the formalizing and ratifying of the agreement that aliens would not and show themselves, not trigger a panic in this world. And in exchange, we would give them some technology and some perhaps biological specimens, according to this document, and they would give us some in return. And they would set up a base out in the Nevada desert, sounds like kind of like Bob Lazar here, where they could land and interact maybe with a few of us or military intelligence personnel, but conduct their own experiments on the surface of the Earth with our gravitational field. Hopefully, nothing sinister was going on. I haven't found anything negative or scary from the Eisenhower encounter stories. It sounds pretty benign.
And that's part of the story that dovetails into what Charles Hall was talking about. So this it happened, and you said they basically finished this in 1955, and 10 years later he was at Nellis, and he said that there was a secret base for them there. So I just find that kind of interesting. And of course, Nellis is in the test range. So
finding out a whole bunch very slowly, drip by drip, as the decades go by, and people start talking like Bob or your source. I just wish more people would stop disappearing. There was some news this morning, the 10th person with like this nuclear reactor, possibly alien technology, has disappeared, and they don't know where these people went. And I've
been following this, Paul. So there was a development this morning. I haven't seen that yet.
I saw where a headline claimed the 10th person has been found vanished. Yeah. Point out, I feel fine. I don't feel suicidal. I'm not going anywhere. I hope you are too. Don't believe any story that I suddenly jumped off a bridge. So
no, I'm going to McDonald's, Paul.
Well, that'll kill you.
Yeah, that's right. That was good. Okay. All right. So let's go then forward to 1973, same in February too. And so people don't, now this is all well documented. Richard Nixon is the president of the United States, and one of his best friends is Jackie Gleason.
Right. I mean, that's a matter of fact.
That is.
Photographed golfing together for a long time. According to a real estate man, Jackie's UFO house that he finished in 1950 outside of New York City in Peekskill, New York, had celebrity guests, including Vice President Richard Nixon. He was in the UFO house. Jackie recreated a space. Isn't that incredible? It's still there, and it's still being out to people. One of the people who rented it was David Bowie, the rock star, who's also obsessed with UFOs. Jackie and Nixon were friends.
So now Nixon was, of course, Eisenhower's vice president. Supposedly Eisenhower was kind of famous for never letting Nixon in on anything. They did not get along. But did Nixon know about any of this stuff that was going on with the tall lady?
I don't think in the first was, but it became more obvious that Nixon was loyal, intelligent, and that he was going to be of the party in 1960. So I think Eisenhower finally took him his confidence and briefed him on the matter. And there's even a source that says, I went to a briefing with both Nixon and Eisenhower on what we have in alien technology. And he said Nixon's eyes kind of popped out like it was somewhat new to him. That in the late 50s. I think he was at one point, Nixon took over as president in January of 1969, and he was already supported by Gleason, and they were golfing buddies, and they both had a home in South Florida, and Jackie in the Inverary golf course there, and Nixon got a home in Key Biscayne to go to, and he went there like many dozens of times in his presidency. So they were there golfing together. They even golfed together a few days before the moon landing in '69. I thought that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I find that this is completely off topic, but I find Nixon's relationship with Bibi Rebozo completely fascinating, because apparently these guys, neither one of them were real talkers, and they would spend, like, according to the aides and the bodyguards, and you brought this up in your book, they could spend like 2 hours in each other's company and not say a word, and they loved it.
Not say anything. Yeah, they knew Nixon had a lot of secrets, a lot of information he had to digest, and he knew some thinking. So they would be like side by side or go out on a boat and breathe a word to each other.
And
they were close friends. Yeah. And Bibi Rebozo had a house next door to Nixon's on the Key Biscayne, where they had a helipad. And Nixon would take Marine One chopper from the helipad at Key Biscayne back to Homestead Air Force Base, which is where the Nixon encounter took place February 19th, incidents that same 1973, 19 years later to the Eisenhower encounter.
So supposedly, now correct me if I'm wrong here, Nixon took Gleason to see these dead alien bodies partly as a payment because Gleason donated some money to his campaign. Am I right about that, or something like that?
I have no proof whatsoever. However, you can put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4. Nick did hush money. He talked about it on the Watergate tapes that he bugged the White House, and he was very distressed and upset. Where am I going to raise this money in January of '73? After the Nixon encounter, Nixon was completely blasé and said, "Oh, well, we've got that. I know we can get our hands on it quickly." Nixon and Gleason shared a lawyer named Herb Kalmbach, who was convicted and went to prison for distributing large cash to the Watergate burglars. So Nixon needed hush money for them. Jackie had millions to burn. They shared the same lawyer. It doesn't take a genius together.
And you alluded with this with Gleason's UFO house, but Gleason was obsessed with UFOs and aliens.
Oh boy, was he, like no one in America.
Yeah. He
had a library of over 1,000 books on the paranormal, mostly on UFOs, calling up UFO authors, UFO producers, people empowered to talk about UFOs.
Some people think he had the best library on UFOs in the entire country. You know,
and it's still at the end of Miami. They have control of it now. You can go and see it if you're down there. And it's probably getting yellowed and weathered, but his whole letters, books, he would go to a paranormal bookstore so often in the Miami area. They just started shipping stuff to him directly, and he was delighted. He ate it all up. He wanted every information.
Right. So on this weekend, Gleason is actually attending to his celebrity pro-am golf tournament, right?
Right. On Monday, February 19th, Nixon flew in by helicopter to the chopper pad at In Golf Course, right behind Jackie's house. It was. Jackie got a golf cart, went rolling right to pick him up. I talked to one of Nixon's surviving aides who was there, and he said, "I thought for sure I was going to see Jackie decapitated on live national television because the chopper were still going, and if he didn't stoop," he was kind of a short man, but he was not, happily. Nixon got in this golf cart and went over to these microphones and addressed the media on live national television. And Nixon answered some questions, and he wanted to show his support for Jackie. And so Nixon's chopper pilot, had the coordinates for the Inverary course, and I think he was sent back to pick Jackie around 8:30 or 9 o'clock that day. And the pilot took him directly to Homestead Air Force Base.
Right. And this is the part of the story that's apocryphal, and you basically counteract it. You know, the apocryphal story is that Nixon drove and picked Gleason up, but you're saying that didn't really happen, huh?
Yeah. That was 35 or 40 miles for Nixon to drive alone, escaping his Secret Service agents
Right.
and finding Jackie's exact house, and then drive 40 miles through South Florida together. Jackie loved to tipple, and sometimes Nixon did a little. It seems most unlikely they were not accustomed. Both were accustomed to having shows and limos. So I don't believe that story whatsoever. Was a quick chopper pad landing by Marine One, Jackie, and flying there took probably about 15 minutes. So that makes much more sense. And that Nixon also enjoyed chopper. He might have gone with his pilot to Jackie's golf course and picked him up in person. Or he met the pilot and, phoned Jackie and said, "There's something I want to show you, Marine One. I'll meet you at Homestead Air Force Base." And that's where the adventure began.
The other thing in that story that never made any sense is supposedly there's the shock of Rich Nixon and Jackie Gleason driving alone in a Ford coming up to Homestead to the gate and being wanted to let in. Because I actually, in reality, I don't think even, the supposedly in the apocryphal story, the guard at the gate is absolutely shocked that the president's in his car with Jackie Gleason. But really, in reality, I don't think they would have believed it. I don't think they'd let those people in. So that's why I also seem to, I believe your version of the story here. So they helicoptered in, and then what happened?
Jackie's wife said that evening, again, face all shook up, nervous and trembling and smoking, and said, "I've just seen the bodies of alien beings at Homestead Air Force Base. Nixon showed me the proof." And she said, "Oh, come on. Where have you really explained the story?" That he was met by Nixon, and they got this vehicle and had 6 bodyguards. No, he said a little team of bodyguards. He gave the number. And they went across to this remote part of the base to a kind of laboratory. It was also guarded by an armed soldier. And they went into this laboratory, or maybe a morgue of sorts. And there were all these kind of examining tables. There were 4 small dwarfish aliens stretched out on tables. He said they had big pointers, big bug eyes, and were creepy little things, all matching, all identical, sounding exactly like the that attacked the Sutton family in Kentucky in 1955. Familiar with that case?
Mm-hmm. And I'm a little unclear on this. Now, we get the story mostly from Jackie's soon-to-be ex-wife, but did Jackie ever talk about this before he passed away?
After my book came out, there was an online article that said Jackie was approached by Hollywood producers who kept asking him, and he said, "Nixon showed me the proof. I know it's real. Nixon showed it to me. That's all I want to say." So he confirmed it outside of his wife, Beverly. Beverly claimed in an article that she started to write for a tabloid that Jackie was stunned but excited and saw the alien bodies and got a good look. And he may have seen something else. There was another source that says Jackie was taken to an airfield hangar on the base, and it opened up for them. And Nixon showed him this silver disc craft that was sort of activated or alive, and it was up in the space and had to be held down by tethers inside this giant hangar. And that, of course, would have been something, $1 million. Jackie may have paid $1 million for this. He wanted solid proof of life for extraterrestrials. He kept on with this offer for many years on the radio in New York City and elsewhere. I'll give $1 million to anyone who can show me the proof. Well, I think he got his money's worth on this night if he did indeed see an alien craft and 4 bodies. And that was it, apparently. At least that's all he told his wife. If there was more chicanery going on at Homestead, he didn't say, and I haven't uncovered it. But it's interesting that it was February 19th, the exact night at an airfield in California, that Eisenhower did what he did. And since my book came out, I've got a source who's got connections far greater than I do. He said, "I didn't know about this Nixon story at all," asking my connections in the military, in the diplomatic corps, and in the media, some in Europe, and they said, yes, that story is actually true. Mr. Smith is correct. And that there was some business to be conducted between Nixon and extraterrestrials, friendly ones. And that's why the night of February 19th is no coincidence. Whether Jackie was allowed to see that or not, I don't know.
Interesting. So now you brought this up when we started here, but Tim Burchett, the congressman, who's been one of the 3 leading congressmen on basically UFO disclosure, he said last week that he was told in a skiff in an official capacity that the United States government had made contact with aliens. He said that publicly, which I find really interesting.
He is doggedly determined. He's making some inroads. He's finding out what UFO researchers have been saying for like a couple decades, that it is true. It's just so hard for some people to open their minds and accept. And when you get into Congress, answers, and not too many are coming. On the night of February 19th this year, Trump issued that declaration. I'm opening up all the files on UFOs and ETs. And what have we gotten since then? Not a thing.
Oh, shit. I didn't realize it was the anniversary. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, is that mind-blowing? Of all the times and dates, he picked the night of February 19th, 2026 to make this big announcement. And so I don't think the military and the government are going to cooperate. They see a president as a passing public official. He'll be out of office in a year or 2 or 3, and why should we cooperate with him?
Right. Now, there's supposedly this rumor going on that on the anniversary of Roswell, about July 9th, that he's going to actually tell the public that, that aliens are here. I don't know. Have you heard that?
I have. I'd like to see it, but I'm a little skeptical.
I am too. My personal thing is I think he'll do it like 2 weeks before he leaves office. That's what I think he will do it, because his ego, whoever does this is going to go down in human history. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. I think his ego is the type that he would love that. So I personally think he's going to do it, but I don't think he's going to do it in July. I don't.
All of our presidents go on talk shows and they ask Stephen Goldberg, Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, all right, are we being visited or not? And they give kind of a smarty cat answer. Well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. Well, maybe, and they laugh and they make a joke. Well, what does that tell you? They won't give you a straight answer because they know the answer is yes, we are being visited. They think we're all a bunch of children who couldn't handle this, that will panic up our religion, our job, our education, and I don't know, go out in the desert and commune with nature or something, or wait for aliens to show up. It's kind of sad that our government doesn't trust us. I could understand it in Eisenhower's day, maybe in Nixon's day, but today, we are saturated with everything alien in movies, TV shows, magazines, comic books. The internet is full of stuff. And, we're much more conditioned and prepared for this announcement today.
Yeah, but Paul, let me run something by you. Do you know who Jazz Shaw was? He passed away about a year and a half ago. He was basically the UFO writer for Salem Media and the Debrief. I mean, he was a regular on my program, and him and I were pretty good friends. We disagreed on only one thing, and that was the disclosure thing. It's not that I disagree with you. I think the American public is ready for this. But the thing is, whoever makes this announcement to the American public announces it to the world. I don't know if the rest of the world is. That's where I'm coming from. I think it's like regardless of politics here, there's countries in the Middle East and in Asia that are basically 200 years behind us. I don't know if they could handle it.
Yeah. Every time we get a date for something big that comes up, nothing much happens. Having said that, there's a CIA former operative named John Ramirez who says something big is coming in 2027. And so I think there's enough that backs this up. We'll see something of an extraordinary, possibly extraterrestrial nature. I don't know what, but they may be putting off an announcement until then. So we'll just see.
Yeah, they've been. The dates 2026 and 2027 have been floating around for about 15, 20 years. I mean, I don't know, true. And I don't know how you're right. I don't know, and I don't know how they could do that far ahead either. But that's I've heard the same thing you've heard, it's either this year or next year. So I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not too frightened. I think if aliens wanted to invade us or attack us, they would have done long so before we're all armed to the teeth and uncovering bacteria and germs and destroying our planet, and that's what killed the aliens in War of the Worlds was bacteria and germs and such. We're more diseased than ever here on planet Earth, so I don't think we're going to be attacked or enslaved or anything like that.
It's pretty obvious. If they were gonna kill us, they could do it in a half an hour.
Yeah, really, or maybe less than that.
They would have done it already.
Yeah, so I'm not too worried.
I'm not either. I'm not either. So just to close up here. Okay, have you done any work or study on past Nixon? What presidents knew and what they knew, if any?
Yes, I just happened to be working last months on Reagan's close encounters and what he may have known and what he was told. He was not obsessed, he was very interested in the whole UFO ET thing almost his whole life, surprisingly. As a boy, he read the Edgar Rice Burroughs sci-fi series, John on Mars, and he got alien life form and may have had 2 or even 3 encounters. And I'm putting it all together. That'll be, maybe I better get that out before 2027 comes along, in case some wacky happens there.
Reagan?
Better finish that fast.
I'm sorry, did you say that was Reagan?
Yeah, President Reagan.
Right. So beyond that,
and here,
did Clinton know?
Here's a little known factoid I looked up on his records. February 19th, 1987, called up all the living former presidents, Nixon, Ford, and Carter, from the Oval Office. What we're discussing, I don't know that exact date. There you go again, February 19th.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I don't know if you know this, but in his published presidential journal diary, I can't remember, it was so it was in 81, October 81, I think, because I've actually seen this, where he talks about having a meeting with the Defense Department in the Oval Office about UFOs. There's no mention of any particulars, but it does actually say the meeting was about UFOs.
Yeah, supposedly there was a briefing that you can read a transcript of in March at Cape, and interesting information is passed along there. And I can't disprove any of it. I'm trying to kind of dig into that in my research. I'm finding it difficult to say, oh, this is phony. He may have been so curious and had a Q clearance as of 1967 when he became governor of California that may have been trusted with the facts, especially since he had his own instant sighting while flying aboard a Cessna over California in 1974.
Are you familiar with the fact that supposedly he was actually not abducted but stopped? Are you familiar with that story? He apparently,
I don't know about stop, but he supposedly to people at a holiday in the 50s that he and they were late for the party because they had seen a UFO come down. And Lucille Ball, the story, and she was like, I'm not a big believer in this, but Reagan came in all excited and told everyone at the party they'd see a saucer come down and land.
I know.
So, world.
Whether that happened is up to debate, but him at that party telling people is pretty much verified. I mean, there are too many people that heard it. He told everybody at the party. So what book you have a book coming out this summer?
Yeah, July 6th. It's called The UFO Bombshell Before Roswell. It'll be a version of my 2016 book and have all I can muster, some new tidbits and information on the 1941 UFO crash in my hometown of Cape Girardeau. And maybe we can do a whole separate show at that time. And it's a fascinating subject, as we've discussed.
Right. We'll have you back for that for sure, because that story, I mean, I've been talking about this just generally here because the thing is everyone assumes that Roswell is the big deal, but in reality, I think this is Cape Girardeau, because it was basically the first one,
6 years before Roswell, we had the proof right in our hands and out from under it.
Yeah, so no, we'll have you back in June, July, okay?
All right, thank you very much, Jim.
I can't thank you enough. I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to put your book on the screen here again. There are 3 of them. There's 3 books here now. The Eisenhower one and the Gleason one are available in Kindle. Unfortunately, the MO41 Bonifacial one is not. So
right, that's the older one. Yeah, that should be out of print, but that's why I'm printing up a new one.
yeah.
That'll be far more updated, contemporary.
Paul, as of this morning, you could buy the paperback version of MO41 on Amazon. They were selling it. So
you're not supposed to be able to. It's a long story. I wish they would deep six the original version, but my new book this summer will wipe that out, and you'll want to get the list.
Yeah. Wait. Well,
just wait.
Right.
Wait a few months to get that.
I can't tell you enough how impressed I am. I want people who watch this to realize that you've researched this so carefully. I mean, it's like you've taken 2 or 3 meetings and it's 300 pages, but the thing is, you're a very good writer, and it's well worth plowing through. It's not difficult to read. It's very entertaining, and your research is just impeccable. And so once again, I really want to, you got kudos for me, and I want to thank you for that, because these things, they need that. They do. Because like you said, and that's another discussion. We'll talk about that in June too. Why are people so afraid of this? That's the other thing. I don't know.
Right. I thank you. I try to give the readers the money's worth.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We'll talk to you soon. Okay. You take care.
Bye.
Our thanks to Paul Blake Smith. I hope you enjoyed that. I can't stress this enough. This guy these books are so copiously researched and documented. If you have any doubt that aliens haven't been coming to Earth, pick up any one of these. Like I said, the last 2, the one on Eisenhower and Nixon and Jackie Gleason, are in Kindle format. The first one is not, but he's redoing that book this summer. So, and it's really, I did not know that till this morning. He's actually from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and we've been talking about that many times because, as we mentioned during the interview, and I've said this many times previously, that is probably the very first documented UFO crash on American soil, not Roswell. Tomorrow night, our guest is Bruce de Torres. He's been here. He was here about a year ago. And we're welcoming him back. His book is called God, School, 9/11, and JFK, and he talks about how the government lies to us and how we shouldn't lie to ourselves. I'm expecting a metaphysical discussion on a whole bunch of stuff. Bruce is a very interesting guy, former Hollywood actor, now full-time writer, and I'm looking forward to that a lot. And I think you will too. I think you'll enjoy it. So that's tomorrow night. That's Wednesday, the 15th. Yeah, tax day. I'll be damned. Why am I smiling? I shouldn't. Anyway, thanks again to Paul Blake Smith. That was terrific. We're cutting this short tonight because that was so long. So no footnotes tonight. We'll try that tomorrow. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are, and good night to you, wherever you may be. We'll see you tomorrow night, folks, with Bruce de Torres. See you then.